Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. It is Tuesday, March 19th, and Joe Biden. Good old Joey, the geriatric, the puppet, the guy that utilizes the White House as a senior living center, hits a golf ball backwards, falls up a flight of stairs, looks for dead people in the crowd, converses with dead people, falls off his bicycle standing stationary, trips over a sandbag, allegedly, during a graduation ceremony, and can't get himself back up, doesn't know how to get to the Oval Office, takes photos with people at events that were never there in the first place. Matter of fact, they weren't even in the same state. Fights with his teleprompter. This is my favorite one. Fights with his teleprompter, of which his teleprompter is going on undefeated, has never lost in 4 years, he is still, and I laugh about it because it's hilarious. He is still the worst president in American history. Patriots, it's so great to be back with you on this fine Tuesday morning. And damn, the left have lost their mind, folks. They're losing their ish over Donald Trump utilizing the term bloodbath. Wait till we show you the clips. They are going full unhinged. Their heads are doing a 360. They don't know what's going on, folks. It's insane what the left are doing right now because they see that they have Joe Biden in office, a geriatric, some dude that's deranged, doesn't know what's happening, versus Donald Trump that gives hour-long speeches, sells out stadiums. People are filling the freaking parking lots and outside just to get a glimpse of the man. Whereas Joe Biden can't fill a parking lot. He can't fill a stadium. He can't fill an empty warehouse. Yes, you heard that correctly. It's empty. He can't even fill 500 people. Allegedly, he won the last election. I think there's a lot of hubbub with that. I think it's a lot of foozery going on. But wait till we get to the clips, folks. That's the main story. Before we jump into that, though, calm down. We got to do some stuff before we get to it. We got yesterday's White House press briefing with the man, the myth, the legend, the gladiator. Peter Doocy is back in the building, folks, questioning Jake Sullivan on, hey, why did it take good old Joey like 32 days to talk to the Prime Minister of Israel? Oh, and by the way, what's going on with Joe Biden yelling at his staffers and cussing at them? Watch the lie on that one, because this dude is fully insane. Let's roll it.
Why did President Biden wait so long? Why did he let 32 days pass between phone calls with Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Well, so first of all, our teams are in contact every single day at every level. President Biden gets a daily, twice daily, sometimes 9 times daily update on what is going on. And he reserves his calls for the Prime Minister for when he believes there's a key strategic moment that needs to come forward. That's point one. Point two, Prime Minister, of course, knows how to reach President Biden. If the Prime Minister felt he needed the President for some reason, he would have picked up the phone and called. And of course, in the last 32 days, President Biden has never declined a phone call from Prime Minister Netanyahu. So this is pretty much the normal give and take of two leaders, both operating their governments, both operating their foreign policies, both working with their teams. And then at a key inflection point in the dialogue between the two sides coming together and talking. I wouldn't make more of it than that.
Doesn't this kind of give credibility that Joe Biden isn't running the country? I mean, how many clips do we have to show where his staffers scurry off and shoo away reporters, even when Joe Biden's asking some dude or gal that we don't even know who it is, I think it's part of the deep state, asking them, hey, can I ask questions? Is that okay? And they just shoo everybody away. In the same way here, it's Joe Biden that's not handling any of the phone calls. It's Joe Biden that's not making the calls at the end of the day. They're presenting as if he is, but as you saw here, he goes a whole month without talking to the dude, and this guy has the cojones to be like, oh, you know, it's actually other people that are basically handling all the phone calls, making the necessary decisions, and Joe Biden's not a part of it whatsoever. Watch this next part here where Peter Doocy questions the idea of, like, why is this dude going unhinged? Why is he yelling at his staffers? Why is he cussing at them? Watch this.
And there's a report that when President Biden was told his handling of the war between Israel and Hamas was starting to affect his poll numbers, the quote is, he began to shout and swear. So when he does that, is he shouting and swearing about Netanyahu or about Hamas or about his poll numbers?
This is the when did you stop beating your spouse question, because I don't think he ever did that. And so, well, you use that as the premise of your question, which is when he does that. I've never seen him do that, shout or swear in response to that. So from my perspective, that particular report is not correct. Yeah.
Wow. Dude straight up lies. So because Jake Sullivan has never experienced it, thus it's never happened. What an insane statement to make. Because you never saw something with your own eyes, it never happened. By the way, go ahead and just disregard all of history then, because the vast majority of history has never been witnessed by you as an individual. What an insane thing to say on the podium. And I can't believe there wasn't pushback from Peter other than, excuse me? I mean, don't get me wrong. An insane statement, the fact that he's going to say it never happened, when you have multiple reports from staffers coming out and saying, this dude has lost his mind. He's screaming at us. He's yelling at us. He's cussing at us in the White House, specifically the Oval Office. Really, Jake? You're going to sit there and play it off like this never happened? Okay, we'll see what more comes of it. I guarantee you somebody's going to end up recording Joe Biden slurring through his words, just yelling at people. We'll have to make out what he says, but I'm sure there's going to be a few cuss words that will probably slip out of his mouth here or there. Well, speaking of other news here, we got the Supreme Court extends block on Texas law allowing police to arrest migrants. As I mentioned, I will keep you up to date on all this stuff because there has been a big fight, a legal fight, between virtually Texas and a few other states, of course, red states, and the Biden administration. And Texas is just getting beat down by what's happening at the southern border and has been getting beat down for years. And so they're trying to figure out, hey, I'm responsible, meaning Governor Greg Abbott speaking, I'm responsible for my constituents. And my constituents don't want this to take place. And if I don't sit there and meet the demands of the constituents, those that voted me into office, then I'm not going to get reelected. And I'm here to execute not just the laws that are on the books, which he has been trying to do and Joe Biden hasn't, but I'm also here to sit there and protect my citizens, as well as uphold the Constitution of which I promised them in the first place when I took oath of office. And so you have the Biden administration constantly going against Governor Greg Abbott that's just finding any solution he possibly can to stop this massive issue taking place at the southern border. Whether you're for immigration or against immigration, it's still an issue, according to Joe Biden. It's still a situation, according to Jen Psaki and Karine Jean-Pierre. It was a challenge, then it was a situation. At no point was it a crisis. We've heard it slip out of the White House mouths a couple times, specifically Joey and John Kirby. Karine Jean-Pierre herself has yet to acknowledge the fact that it's a crisis. So what they did was Texas started saying, you know what, if somebody here is criminally here illegally, which by definition, right, if you're here illegally, then you're a criminal, is that we're just going to arrest them and we'll deal with it that way. The Biden administration goes, no, you can't do that. No. And they took it up to the Supreme Court. And initially, they actually had I think it was a federal court, sit there and say they couldn't do it. Well, now we got some changes taking place here. I understand it's all confusing. Trust me, it's confusing for me. At one point, you could do it, then you couldn't do it, then you could do it, and now you can do it again? Let's find out. The Supreme Court on Monday extended a block on Texas law that would allow police to arrest illegal immigrants after they cross the border. In its decision, the court said that a stay request from the Biden administration would be extended pending further review. Notice, the Biden administration is saying, hey, we're doing everything we possibly can to figure out what's going on at the border. Joe Biden's losing sleep over this, you guys. That's not according to me. I'm regurgitating what the White House has said over the past 3 years. He's doing everything he can. He's trying to figure out how to solve it. Since day one, he's put forward comprehensive legislation, the most fair and trustworthy legislation you've ever seen in your entire life. On day one, mind you, we're almost 4 years later now. Nothing's been done. He's losing sleep over it, and they're trying to solve it, while at the same time, you have Governor Greg Abbott, who's actually trying to solve it, where the Biden administration is clearly not trying to solve it. Let's go through a few of the things that we've seen in the past. White House doesn't want to, the executive branch, specifically Joe Biden to be even more specific, doesn't want to execute the laws in the books and protect the border. Again, this has nothing to do with you for illegal immigration or against illegal immigration. It's just what's happening. He doesn't want to secure the border and allow legal entry and stop allowing illegal entry. So Greg Abbott is seeing 10,000 to 16,000 per day, right? This was during COVID, and they're allowing people just to walk freely across the border, and the localities were having to pay for their COVID vaccinations and also their COVID tests back then. And they were busing these people in by the greyhounds. And the localities were having to foot the bill for all of this. And so the localities, not the state, the localities declared emergencies because they didn't have it in the budget, and it was crippling the locality. So that was taking place. And so the Biden administration didn't want to do anything about it, even though these localities were pleading help at the time. These mayors were just requesting from the federal government, hey, we need aid, we need help, we need some funds here to take care of what you've caused. And then what you ended up having was all these people were then also being shifted into these pods during COVID-19, of which, again, none of them were really being tested and being let into the interior of the country as well. Well, they're stuffing them in the pods that were only supposed to have about 100 people. And what they were doing is stuffing them into pods of 100 that we're putting in 400 people. So you're supposed to have like 100. You're putting in like 400 people. They were stuffed in there like sardines. We showed footage. We showed pictures of this early on. I'm sure it's still in the catalog. And so what happened was the CDC said, hey, you're only supposed to have like 50% capacity. They were way exceeding 50% capacity during the time of COVID. Well, then what the Biden administration did was they didn't try to figure out the border and solve it. They sat there and said, hey, you know what? Why don't we just have the CDC extend the capacity, like make it bigger? So they went from 50% to 100%. All the while, because they couldn't fit any more people in these pods and at the border, this is when they started flying them under the dark of the night on unregistered flights, meaning just like uncoded. And they were flying them and landing on tarmac. And we saw the body cam footage of these agents going up saying, what plane is this? Where'd you come from? Who are you? And they were strategically parking where there was no lights. They were parking in these hangars and all the lights were off so these people could be let loose. And they would go into these undocumented minivans. Some of them were from local churches in the area and sitting there and driving them to certain destinations and also destinations unknown. Furthermore, they were also flying them in the stadiums and utilizing stadiums as a place of housing. So you had that taking place at the border. Furthermore, Texas goes, man, we got to figure something out here. They're not willing to build a border wall. They think it's racist. We got to do something because this is what the constituents want. So Texas built makeshift border walls with shipping containers. Because again, Pelosi, right, Schumer, that's racist. You can't build walls. You can't do that. You know, the messed up face. So he builds a wall with shipping containers. And the Biden administration, rather than sitting there and figuring out the situation at the border and handling it correctly, what they did was they sent in Biden's EPA to sit there and tell them that they're harming the environment. This is on federal land. You're a state. You're not allowed to do it. We're going to need these removed. So now there's no border wall. So what did Governor Greg Abbott do? He goes, well, shit, we got to figure out something here. Let's put up razor wire instead of a wall. And that way we're not harming the environment, but it gives us some protection to stop this massive flood from happening. Because again, I'm meeting the demands of my constituents and they don't want this to happen. Well, by golly, what happened? Karine Jean-Pierre, the Biden administration says you can't do that. It's harming migrants. It's not allowing border protection, border patrol agents to be specific. They can't do their job. You're putting their lives at risk. That was what Karine Jean-Pierre, quote, you are putting their lives at risk. What an insane statement. Who is she talking about? Border Patrol. You're putting Border Patrol's lives at risk for razor wire, which, by the way, you guys, more than walls, razor wire is the #1 security measure across the globe and has been for a long time. You could probably see razor wire. On my way to work, I see razor wire. Nobody's being harmed. Nobody's trying to climb the fence through the razor wire because everybody understands you're going to cut yourself. It's not going to feel good. It's hazardous. You probably shouldn't do it. I'm not harming myself by looking at the razor wire. Somehow the White House, this makes sense. So what do? By golly, they have to get rid of the razor wire. So they put that forth. Well, Greg Abbott's like, God, I can't do razor wire. I can't do shipping containers. What else can I do? Well, there's the river there. And what they're doing is some of them are drowning, going through the deep end of the river and also getting sucked down river from the shallow end. So why don't we put buoys in the shallow end so they don't even attempt to go in the deep end and get pulled away from in the river and end up dying? So let's just put buoys through. That way we're not harming them with razor wire and they just won't go through the buoys because they can't get through the buoys. That seems a pretty safe thing to do. You're going to look at it and go, I can't do it. Well, by golly, the Biden administration says they're doing everything they can about it, losing sleep over it. This has been an issue since day one. It's a problem. It's a challenge. It's a situation. Got rid of the buoys. You can't do it. I'm sure they had the EPA jumped in regarding, you're harming the water. The fishies can't handle it. So they handled that now at the border. So Texas goes, well, God, what else are we going to do? And that brings us now with this whole thing of let's just arrest these people because of the criminal behavior that's being conducted by coming here illegally. And then you have the Biden administration that's doing everything they possibly can to stop them from actually doing it. So much so now the Supreme Court put an extended block on it. The Texas Attorney General said that the state's law mirrored federal law. Of course it did. Of course it did. You literally have a gentleman, and I'm using this term very loosely because I'm talking about Biden. It depends who you're talking to, right? If you're talking to a Democrat, Biden's the most gentleman man ever. If you're talking to a conservative, hell no. Well, he's sitting there not wanting to execute the laws in the books. So, of course, it would mirror federal law. But when you have an executive branch, and specifically a president of the United States, that's the one that execute the laws in the books, well, then, hey, it doesn't really mirror it so much according to Biden. Mirrored federal law and was put in place to compensate for the Biden administration's inadequate response at the southern border. Correct. The Biden administration sued to strike down the measure, arguing it would basically go around federal authority on immigration, hurt international relations, and create chaos in administering immigration law. hurt international relations how? I don't understand that. I'm sorry. Mexico's going to get upset with us. Venezuela's going to get upset with us. Who would care about that? What? Like, her international relations? Oh, big whoopee. There's bigger things going on. What, are they not going to want to do business with us? Like, oh God, oh, we're so worried. Oh, they don't want to do business with us. Mexico won't want to work with us. Oh, they're not doing anything for us right now. Like, what do we care? What do we care? This is part of their problem. You don't see them trying to secure the border. You don't see them building a border wall. Like, we've actually seen footage of them, Mexico police, escorting busloads of migrants to the border. They're not helping us. Who cares about that? Come on. A federal judge in Texas struck down the law last month, but the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal, so there you go, that's what I was referring to earlier, quickly stayed that ruling, leading the federal government to appeal the Supreme Court, or to the Supreme Court, rather. The battle over this bill has been only one of multiple legal disputes between state and Texas and the Biden administration, but I thought they're doing everything they can. Why would there be multiple disputes? Why would there be any disputes if you're sitting there trying to figure the thing out? Well, we all know why, because Joe Biden just doesn't want to do it. That's the clearest answer, you guys. That's really what it comes down to. Joe Biden just doesn't want to do it. He could do it legally through executive action, which, by the way, it's not an overreach of the executive branch to do. It's legally his obligation, by the way, to do it. He is legally bound to uphold the Constitution and the laws that are on the books and execute those laws. Hence the executive branch. He just doesn't want to do it. You have a sitting president that actually does not want to execute the very thing that he took an oath of office to do. Put his hand on the Bible, a supposed Catholic, doesn't actually want to sit there and follow the laws on the books, which is insane. Look, laws aren't built to follow whether you like them or don't like them. They're the laws on the books. So none of this is my opinion. If there is a law that's on the books, even if you were for illegal immigration, let's just plead the case. If you were for illegal immigration, it is still not allowed. You could be for a lot of things. If it's illegal, and thus you can't do it. I think people should be able to drive 100 miles an hour. But if the speed limit's 65, that's what it is. That's what it is. What are you going to sit there and look at the officer and go, well, I don't think it's morally right that I have to go 65 when I think I should morally be allowed to go 100. Doesn't matter. The law's the law, and you follow it. Whether you're for it or against it, that's how we work as a society. And the second that you start getting rid of that and using your own subjective judgment on something that should be objective, meaning something we all follow, which is the law, the second you remove that, you have a society that crumbles. And that's very much what's going to happen here, because in the next 15 years, if this continues, you're actually going to have more people here illegally than you are potentially legally. I shouldn't say that. That's extreme. Sorry, that's extreme. Now, I think 25% of the population is going to be illegal immigrants or more, from what I've heard. Now, there's some loosey-goosey numbers there. We'll see what happens with it. But that's what's going on. Greg Abbott's still fighting for his constituents. He's still fighting, but, with the election coming up, we'll see what comes of it. Well, you also have New York reaching deal with activists on right to shelter law amid migrant crisis. It's just crazy. It's crazy. It's not like they're working with lawmakers, you guys. They're working with activists. So New York City last week reached a deal with homeless activists to scale back the city's right to shelter law, easing some of the pressure on the city to house thousands of new illegal migrants. Like we just covered yesterday, Chicago's kicking out and evicting migrants, putting them back to home base, and just taking the people that were at the home base and just putting them into the same shelter that they just got done evicting other migrants. And it's just a vicious circle. Probably the same thing is taking place here. So they all talk to each other, right? Like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're evicting people. But what we're really doing is not really evicting them. We're just putting them into another shelter that we're calling home base and taking the people from the home shelter and then putting them into the shelter. That's all they're doing. So under the new agreement, adult migrants will only be allowed to stay in a city shelter for 30 days. There you go. There you go. And so what are they going to do? Once they're only in there for 30 days, they're going to take those ones out and just put in a brand new migrant. Families with children not being affected by the agreement, or rather will not be affected by the agreement, and some adults who meet certain criteria, such as having a medical disability, will be allowed to stay longer. Younger adult migrants aged 18 to 23 will have slightly longer, at least 60 days, 2 months basically, in shelters before being booted. Homeless people who are not migrants will also not be affected. So they say, folks, there's only so much space here. Okay. There's a lot of homeless people in Democrat-ran areas, and honestly, even Republican areas, but predominantly Democrat-ran areas. Like I mentioned, Los Angeles has over a quarter of the nation, over 25% of the nation's homeless population in one county. in one county, not a state. They're carrying the majority, almost the majority of, if you look in proportionality, of homeless people across the country in one state. It's wild. Over the last year or so, the humanitarian crisis stemming from large numbers of migrants arriving in New York City stretched to the breaking point the city's ability to comply with existing requirements. Folks, their infrastructure is collapsing. They're having to navigate this field of trying to figure out their budget because remember, the state can't print money where the federal government can. So the states that are absorbing all this cost, because again, they bragged about being a right to shelter, right to sanctuary city, are now being crumbled. They're getting destroyed by what's taking place here. Their infrastructure is collapsing. Their education system is the one that's taking the biggest hit because basically you have all these people that don't speak English, regardless of what nation they're coming from. It doesn't mean Mexico. Hell, it could be China or whatever nation. They don't speak English. And so the teachers, because they're so used to having a certain amount of, portion of the population come in that are non-English speakers, they can't actually cater to all the people. They don't have the support system for them. And so because they don't have this support system for them, they're having to hire more people to support those migrants. But because you don't have that money coming in from the migrants to offset that new change of dollar amount that's going towards taking care of these migrant children, they're being crumbled and they don't have the money for it. And it's crippling them. So, and also because they don't have places to hold the migrants, they're having to shift some of the budget from the education. Let that sink in. Shift money from the education department to help the housing of these migrants. So much so that they're calling on the citizens of New York to house migrants. They're asking the churches to take care of them. And they're pleading with the Biden administration. A Democrat is pleading with another Democrat to send them billions of dollars to take care of a problem that Joe Biden caused. In other words, the Democrat Party caused. None of this is my opinion. I didn't even say I was for or against this stuff. I'm just saying this is what the news is saying. So wild. Previously, New York has a decades-old obligation to give a shelter bed to any homeless person who asks for one. No other major U.S. city has a requirement like this. Well, when you offer an incentive that's amazing, people are going to sit there and take you up on the offer that's amazing. And because it's an offer that's amazing, and a lot of people, would take it up if they have the opportunity to, now that you have a bunch of people that are actually taking you up on that opportunity, not so amazing anymore, is it? Because it all comes down to money. The money. Do we have money? No, we don't have money. The state doesn't have money. The federal government doesn't have money. Nobody has money. Some states do. And they tend to be Republican. Not New York City. New York City has seen 183,000 new illegal migrants who showed up to the city since spring of 2022. About 65,000 migrants remain in the city's care, forcing the city to slash its budget. There you go. And open new shelters. This is also the same city, you guys, that we showed video, that they're giving them plasma TVs, Xboxes, couches, bedding, laundry services, a revolving 3-course menu throughout the day that's catered to where they're coming from. Because every culture has different type of food and eating habits. Cater to them. They get recreational facilities. They get cell phone services. They get actual landline services as well. They're given lawyers. Some of them are getting their transportation paid for. They're getting rental assistance. Some of them are actually, specifically the Democrats, are kicking out our veterans out of motels and hotels and replacing them with migrants. Now, when we covered this story, it was the veterans that actually fought in Iraq and Afghanistan were being replaced by the very people that came here illegally from Iraq and Afghanistan. Let that one sink in. You sacrificed your life. You put your life on the line for this country, and you're actually giving up your I guess some might say right to shelter if you're the Democrats, but you're giving up a bed. I always say giving up. You're stealing a bed from a homeless veteran that should have that probably amongst a lot of us, somebody that actually put their life on the line for somebody that potentially could have even fought against. We don't know. We don't know who some of these people are. So just wild stuff happening. Wild stuff. Well, let's get to our stories about Trump here. I think y'all been waiting long enough. So here's the first bit of Trump, and then we'll actually get into the left completely going unhinged. I mean, the videos that we have of this stuff is just wild. You get a good kick out of it because it's insane how they're losing their mind over nothing. But here's an update on Trump's lawyers and his lawsuit. He's having trouble, you guys, securing the full $454 million bond, practical impossibility in New York fraud case. Now, we said this was going to happen. Remember, in New York City, through this civil fraud trial, which, look, is insane. It's insane. I actually want to speak on that real quick because it is wild what they did to this man. And I know all of you agree with it, but they sat there and went after this man and said, look, the way you valued your property, you overvalued it. You guys, I want to give you an example of how this works in real estate. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but maybe there's a lib in here where you could change their mind. So everybody sits there and has to kind of sit there and set in terms of what their asset is in terms of valuation. And of course, especially when you're taking out a loan, whether it's a construction loan or whatever it may be, is that you're trying to get the most value out of that property or that asset as you possibly can. Now, sometimes there's no name attributed to that asset, right? Like us. Like, I'm a no-namer. I hate to say it. A lot of us are no-namers. You know, we're patriots at the end of the day, but you know what I mean. Like, we don't have the level as we would of a celebrity or something like that. There's a reason why Elvis Presley's home, Graceland, is going to be valued more than maybe the dude next door who could have the same exact house, the same exact everything, but the fact that Elvis lived in Graceland, the valuation of that property is going to skyrocket. In the same way, there's a house, I don't remember what state it's in, but it has to do with the Conjuring franchise, the movie franchise. It's a real house that's built off a story about a family that had a bunch of paranormal experiences in that house. The house is only going to be worth, realistically, it's probably worth 150,000, maybe 200,000. But because of the franchise, because of Hollywood, because of the events that took place in that house that built a franchise, the valuation skyrocketed. And I heard it sold not for 200,000, not for 300,000, but it was being listed at like 1.2, 1.5 million. You have Donald Trump, a dude that's been a billionaire for decades, one of the richest, well-known people in the world, probably the most well-known person in the world other than Jesus Christ himself, has a piece of property. The dude was a billionaire. He had a mega TV show. He's done a lot of things. The freaking president of the United States. Of course, the valuation is going to go through the roof. But when you have a knucklehead judge that's clearly progressive, clearly left-leaning, is going to sit there and go after this man, tell him that he's guilty before he's ever had a trial, doesn't even get a jury. It's insane, you guys. And that brings us to this, because in New York City, it's not like, even if you appeal it, it's not like this the verdict was of the $464 million freaking dollars, which is insane. It's not like that goes away. So even though Trump obviously is going to appeal this, who wouldn't? He still owes that money. He doesn't have 400, even if he's a billionaire, he doesn't have the money in cash. He doesn't have the money. Nobody, a lot of, Elon Musk doesn't even have that money. You'd have to sell a ton of assets to get that money on hand. And that was the whole goal. The whole goal was to cripple Trump, you guys. It wasn't put him behind bars. That's not the objective. Maybe in some areas, in some of the trials it is. This objective was to cripple him. This objective was to keep him in the courtroom and not on the campaign trail. That's the objective, is to sit there and go after this guy for anything and everything. The guy doesn't pay a damn parking ticket in time. They're going to sit there and put a lawsuit on him. So you have this. Former President Trump's lawyers indicated in court filing on Monday that he is unable to secure the full $464 million bond due in his New York fraud case, an endeavor one insurance broker called a practical impossibility. Now, when you use terms like impossible, especially in statistics, that means it ain't going to happen. It's not like, oh, it's a slight chance. Usually impossibility means ain't no way in hell that's going to happen. Attorneys for Trump and his co-defendants in the case said in a filing with the state's intermediate appeals court, it was impossible for them to secure the full amount for an appeal bond. Of course it is. I said this off the get-go, you guys. I told you, go back and listen to it. This isn't something I want to give me a pat on the back about. I said Trump is probably going to have to sell some assets, you guys. It's either he sells the assets and pays it, or what is his name, Loretta Lynch, or whatever this god-awful person's name is. You're going to have the state of New York take hold and seize the asset of Trump's building. Let that one sink in. They're going to sit there and take this man's stuff. Defendants' ongoing diligent efforts have proven that a bond in the judgment's full amount is a practical impossibility, the lawyers wrote. Citing an affidavit signed by an insurance broker who testified for Trump during the trial last year, Trump's attorneys claim that they spent countless hours negotiating with one of the largest insurance companies in the world and have approached 30 companies to back the bond. Efforts, they said, they were pursuing before the judgment was made. After hearing this trial, if you're somebody that's doing business in New York, what is wrong with you? Now, there might be listeners here and viewers that are doing business in New York. Does this, hand of God, does this not terrify you? Because it would for me if I was doing business in New York. You're hearing a lot of conservatives, especially like Dan Bongino, Ben Shapiro, like the Daily Wire guys, a lot of these conservatives saying, get the hell out of New York. Don't go to California, like you're hearing from Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary. Don't go to New York. Get the hell out. You need to get out of Democrat-ran areas if you're doing business. My long-term plan, if I can get the show up and running, is to get out of Dodge of the state of California, because this place is crumbling. Democrats are destroying everything that's great about the United States and their localities and their states. If you're doing business, get the hell out of Dodge, especially if you're in real estate. Nuts. So the amount of the judgment with interest exceeds the $464 million. Again, that's just kind of the penalty. Now we're dealing with the interest, so it's actually more than that. And every few bonding companies will consider it a bond of any approaching that magnitude. I mean, who would? The amount of risk involved in that, especially when you have the name Trump attached to it, not because he can't pay it back, not because he can't offset it with his assets as collateral, but because these Democrats, these progressive leftists, are going after this guy so hard that they don't believe that he's actually going to sit there and win the appeal, because it's not about if he's right or wrong. It's just about what this freaking progressive judiciary is going after this man for. That's what it is. So Trump is right. His asset valuation was right. Early on, I was a little loosey-goosey about it, because like, I don't know, like maybe he did or didn't. No, Trump was right. His assets were fine. And by the way, nobody got harmed. In all the years he's ever done this, decades of real estate, the dude's never harmed anybody. Who was the victim in the case? You can't say it was the people of New York. The amount of taxes this guy pays is more than the vast majority of people in New York pay themselves. So he was so good at paying back his debts. He was so freaking good at paying it back on time that the banks were like, yes, sir. When can we do business with you again? Yes, please. No bank ever said anything bad about him. There was nobody harmed in this trial. It's insane. I know I'm speaking to the freaking choir here, but you guys, if they're going to go after a former president, what for the love of God makes you think when you have a registered Republican, like a lot of you, or even independents, don't matter. If you don't have a D after your name, guess who they're going to go after? You and I. Yes. Well, Brad, that sounds outrageous. They're not going to do that. What do you mean? What do you mean? The Obama administration went after conservatives with the IRS. Joe Biden utilized the government to go after Christians for having service, which is their freaking First Amendment right. He used the IRS to go after his political opponents already. What do you mean? They've already done it. And you really think that they weren't going to do it again? You're sorely mistaken, my friends. You are sorely mistaken if that is your thinking. That whole idea of like, oh, we're only going to tax the wealthy and hiring 86,000 IRS agents. We're only going to go after the wealthy. You are sorely mistaken. They are not only going after the wealthy. Once you sit there and drain the pockets of the wealthy, there's only so much money you can pull from these people. Who else are they going to go after? All of us. Yes, they're going to go after all of us, folks. You have that right. It's a bunch of foozery. It's a bunch of foozery. There's not enough money from the wealthy to fix the problem that our government has created for ourselves. They're going to come for you, and it's only a matter of time. So what's going to happen here? Well, again, he's ordered to pay this. I don't know what the deadline is of him having to pay this, but part of the issue is Trump's lawyers claim that the former president is unable to put up property for collateral as part of the bond due to the massive sum. So it makes me wonder then if his collateral isn't up to $464 million. I'm curious of where other his investments are to make him a billionaire. That's one question I do have. Trump's lawyers argue that there's only a handful of basically surety companies that are approved by the Treasury Department to underwrite a bond as high as this one. Okay, so that makes sense. So he has other property that's highly valued, but he can't utilize it because basically the Department of Treasury hasn't allowed him to utilize it based on the criteria and the qualifications and conditions of which one needs to be able to get the bond. So that actually makes sense. So his valuation is upwards of over $1 billion easy then. Noting that many have internal policies that they will only issue a bond up to $100 million. It just shows you how outlandish this case is as well. That the fact that you can't even find somebody that has even encountered a scenario like this. So not only is he the first sitting president to experience a lot of this, but the dude is probably the first U.S. citizen to ever really experience something on this magnitude and get screwed over by a state. This is insane. In addition, Trump's team argued that none of the sureties will accept hard assets such as real estate as collateral and will only accept cash or equivalents. That to me is insane. Especially when you have Trump's backing on these assets. Like, why would you not? They noted that the reason behind is that the surety companies are not in the business of managing properties and are not willing to take the risk of needing to sell off real estate quickly if it's the claim is made under the bond. I mean, that makes sense. Basically, the liquidity of it and how fast they can move that asset and sell it, of which, you have to have the money in the first place. But if you have to pay off that bond or whatever's being dispelled, you can't sell that asset quick enough, then yeah, that a lot of this makes sense. But damn, he's getting shellacked right now, which is insane. I'm not laughing. It's just astonishing to me that this is taking place and the Democrats love it. Remember, when you open up this doorway on Republicans, specifically a sitting president, you've opened the doorway now for the rest of existence for this to happen to every sitting president. And you bet your butt, if Trump's in office, you're never going to see the executive branch move in the way it's ever moved before. The firings and just the completely dismantling of every single part of government. Joe Biden better be fearful. Joe Biden better be fearful, because you know Trump's going to put somebody in office, or he's going to bring somebody out. Whoever his attorney general is going to be given full reign, full power to go down on Democrats. You should start with Nancy Pelosi, hit up Chuck Schumer, Ilhan Omar, AOC. The squad. Definitely Joe Biden. Hit up Bernie Sanders for that matter. Just start putting them all under investigation. And I'll tell you what, they'll think twice before they ever do that again. Well, because Trump talks a lot, we got a video of him talking about a bloodbath. So he's talking about the auto workers and the unions and stuff like that. And basically saying, look, if we don't negotiate with like China and Mexico and these countries, because our unions obviously want more wages for their people that are part of the union workers, is that what you have a problem with is, now that we're a global market, and he talked about this in 2016, this is nothing new, by the way, is that they are going to outcompete themselves with the global sector, like we're seeing from Ford and other manufacturers that used to build here in America, build better, pay better, all the stuff about America, buy America, is that they're moving these plants to other countries because the labor is cheaper and you're getting the same vehicle, but for cheaper value. And so Trump's saying, look, if you don't work with these people here, which the Biden administration is not really doing, even though he says he's for union workers, is that there's going to be a bloodbath on your hands if the guy's not elected, because Joe Biden's destroying the economy and the left is losing their ish over Donald Trump talking like this. Now, we'll play it all the way through because I want full context of what he's talking about here, because they tend to lie, and they are lying, and I'll show you proof about what they're saying about Donald Trump and what he said here about bloodbath. Let's roll it.
Mexico has taken, over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it. Went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not.
Now, here's the problem with that. Remember, just because Trump says something doesn't mean it's always good. Here's the issue with that. Yeah, you're putting a tariff on it, but the problem is that it could potentially actually harm us citizens, and it actually increase the price of the good of whatever we're buying. So there is some good out of it, of like, yeah, you know what, you're penalizing them, but at the same time, not necessarily. You could actually be hurting Americans with this as well. Could be. We'll see what happens.
Not going to be able to sell those cars if I get elected. Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine,
So that quote, yes. You're like, is that it, Brad? Is that really what they're getting upset about? Yes. The fact that he used bloodbath in his speech, they're losing it. So I'm going to show you a montage of the media double down on their coverage regarding Trump's bloodbath comment. They're losing their minds over it. So here's a montage, and then we're going to see Joe Scarboro lose his mind. We're going to see Nancy Pelosi lose her mind. I know what's new, but here it is.
We begin tonight with the race for the White House and former President Trump's campaign now on the defensive after his fiery rhetoric at a rally in Dayton, Ohio on Saturday night. Trump warning while discussing the economy that there would be a, quote, bloodbath if he is not reelected in November.
I read the headlines and was like, oh my gosh, what is he saying now? And then I went in and watched it, and I had a slightly different context because he is speaking all about cars and tariffs and auto industry. But the problem is, he also sounded slightly incoherent because he then veered the way he has lately in a lot of these rallies.
Vocabulary.
Well, when he says like, yeah, and if I don't get reelected, you can almost start to follow his irrational thought process of, there'll be a bloodbath. So I don't think it was too far of a stretch that the media was running with it. I do think some people then calling for like, this is the sounds of a new insurrection and all this, they were running a little too far.
That's how fascism and totalitarianism, and in Germany's case, the Holocaust came to Germany, which had been a country where there were big institutions of democracy until, as you well know, the early 1930s. He tells you he'll be a dictator for a day. We all know that dictators don't resign after a day. When he uses the word bloodbath, yes, it was in the context of an automobile industry speech, but he knew exactly what he was saying.
The unhinged, rambling rants that you see from the former president of the United States are baked in. And I think in a way we are all desensitized and inured to the extraordinary, remarkable, and very at times un-American and threatening things that the former president is saying. I'm not saying it's easy to understand how to cover it, but I think we have to cover it. When the former president, who's already incited violence among his followers, says that there's going to be a bloodbath after the election, if he does not win, he is telling us what he is going to do.
It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That will be the least of it. Now, the Trump team quickly said last night, nothing to see here. He was just talking about the auto industry. Consider the full context, everyone. Otherwise, it's irresponsible. Well, if they want us to consider the full context, let's do just that. And during his first term, he flat out refused to condemn the political violence at a white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia.
He literally did that. He's on tape. He's on tape. Holy shit. I haven't seen this. You're seeing a real-time reaction. I'm sorry for cussing. You're seeing the lie. This is blatant. This is blatantly lying. There is tape of Donald Trump. It's insane. How many times are we going to have to hash this out? Over 8+ years. I'm telling you, Democrats lop this up, you guys. Oh, it's so good. She's telling the truth. This lady didn't even tell the truth when she was White House press secretary.
Saying there were very fine people on both sides. So no, we did not miss the full context. This was not some meandering off-message comment. This is his message. As the Biden campaign put it, this is who Donald Trump is. A loser who gets beat by over 7 million votes, and then instead of appealing to a wider mainstream audience, doubles down on his threats of political violence.
Folks, we're not done. We're not done, but tell me that's not insane. Oh my God. So it doesn't stop there. You got Nancy Pelosi. I swear she's smiling during this clip. She's just from ear to ear, cheek to cheek, just smiling the entire time. She's had so much work done. Here she is just going unhinged. Typical.
He's even predicting a bloodbath. What does that mean? He's going to exact a bloodbath? There's something wrong here. How respectful I am of the American people and their goodness. But how much more do they have to see from him to understand that this isn't what our country is about? Praising Hitler, praising the Russians. Honestly, condemning our soldiers for losing or dying in war or being captured in war. It said, what's wrong with Russia? They defeated Hitler. What about the millions of Americans who risked or gave their lives? What about him saying that soldiers buried in Europe, he didn't want to visit them because they were losers?
They'll just continue to lie, you guys. They'll just continue to just fabricate stuff out of thin air, or they'll sit there and just lie about things. So here's Nancy Pelosi. So we'll just continue. Here's Joe Scarborough. I was going to bring up another clip of Nancy Pelosi, but forget it. Here's Joe Scarborough. This is the same guy that completely continues to lose his mind. He said that Donald Trump, if he's elected, is going to sit there and arrest people in the streets and start executing people right there in the streets everywhere across America. That's this guy, but we'll let him say his little rant here.
He's talking about a bloodbath for America. It's laid out in the terms of it, and these idiots on Twitter, these idiots on cable news, these idiots on Sunday shows going, well, presidents, he was talking only about the auto industry, and this is one more. It's just bullshit. Let me say that at 6:15 a.m. It's just bullshit. He knew what he was doing. We're not stupid. Americans aren't stupid. He was talking about a bloodbath. Sometimes a bloodbath means a bloodbath. And when he finishes by saying, and that's just going to be the least of it, seriously, These people may be stupid. We're not.
No, Joe, you are stupid. Let me help you, buddy. It's kind of like that family Thanksgiving dinner. The stupid one doesn't know that they're the stupid one at the table, but everybody else knows that they're the stupid one. That's Joe Scarboro. Dude. So insane. I mean, you guys, we've seen it time after time, right? Always taking Trump's words, spinning them, manipulating them. We need to sit there and build in America, make lots of money for our auto workers, bring the unions here, just sit there and make everybody so freaking rich. If they don't do it, there's going to be a bloodbath because people are going to be pissed. He wasn't being literal, okay? Oh my God, dude, it's so head spinning. So that's the left. It's only going to ramp up, you guys. Folks, it's only March. It's only March. We're nowhere near November. Can you imagine the content that we're going to get here on the Bald Brad Show? The content that we're going to get from Joe Biden, Karine Jean-Pierre, Joe Scarborough, and these other knuckleheads like Jen Psaki and others. Like, it's going to be endless, but it's insane. I know is there a better word? Is there a better word that I can use other than wild and insane for what's happening here? That they're going to sit there and pull this as if we can't look back in history of the audio tapes of Donald Trump saying something and then condemning it later? Holy lordy. Well, speaking of insane things, speaking of just insane, you have here Elon Musk going up against Don Lemon regarding a litany of things, but here it's titled, "You Keep Putting Words in My Mouth, Elon Musk Slams Ex-CNN Host Over Race, Gender, Politics." So there's a whole interview with Don Lemon on X, formerly known as Twitter, and this article does an awesome job coming from Daily Caller, of summarizing different scenarios that took place rather than watching the whole thing together. So Elon Musk slammed former CNN host Don Lemon over race and gender politics in an interview released Monday as the first episode of the Don Lemon Show. Musk chose to cancel his partnership with Lemon Show Wednesday after the fired CNN anchor conducted the interview with the tech mogul that changed their relationship. Dude did one interview. The guy's like, nah, you're good. I'm good. Get rid of you. It was that bad. And it was bad. I watched it. Lemon opted to release the interview during which he sparred with Musk over identity politics, of course, because that's all the left has is identity politics. That's all the Democrats have ever cared about is race. From their inception, they're the party of the Klan, they're the party of slavery, they're the party that went against civil rights movement. If you didn't have Republicans, you wouldn't have freedom, you wouldn't have anti-slavery, you wouldn't have all that stuff. Republicans are the party of prosperity. We are the party of equality. We're of the party that wants to give everybody an opportunity out there to be whoever you want to be, as long as it doesn't exceed a certain limit. What do I mean by that? Sorry, folks. If you're a little person and you're 3'5", you're not going to be an NBA star. You could try out, you give it an opportunity, but you just don't have it biologically. Same thing with me. I'm 5'9", on a good day, 5'10". If I'm wearing heels, we can go up. It's a joke. It's a joke. I'm not a cross-dresser. I don't even know why I said that, to be honest. But you understand what I was trying to make a joke. Not that everything lands. Okay, you shoot from the hip. I wasn't prepared. But I'm not going to be an NBA star. Okay, I don't have the physique for it. I don't have the skill. Okay, biologically, I'm just not there. So everything about the Democrat Party is identity politics. Well, Lemon told Musk that the term woke originally meant being aware of inequalities in society and being aware of facts and history. There is truth to that, but the definition of what woke is has actually changed. He's given the basic definition, but there's also definitions of words that change over time, and it's basically utilized as slang. And that's kind of what conservatives, Republicans utilize in terms of woke, is the slang version of it, not the actual definition that you would see in a textbook. So which the tech mogul agreed was fine. However, Musk pushed back by saying that trying to make everything a race is an issue and a very corrosive one to society, and I actually agree with that. But this is more of the Ibram X. Kennedy / Nicole Hannah-Jones 1619 project and just the main ideology of the progressive left, where race is intertwined with every aspect of your life. Even if you're not racist, according to the left, just because you have white skin, you are racist. And there's no solving it, by the way. They'll put you through all these like types of trainings, right? These unconscious bias trainings, and try to sit there through different activities and different conversations and Socratic seminar. And, hey, let's bring out the racism out of you that you just are unconscious that you have. And when it's not uncovered, right? Because it's being masked and you haven't actually uncovered it. Well, it's still there just because you're white. And there's actually no solving it because you can't solve the fact that you're white. You can go try and tan, but some of us can't tan. So I know it's insane, you guys, but that is the philosophy of the left, and it's corrosive. It's destroying. That's why I wrote an entire book, and I haven't plugged in a while. We might as well. We got Trojan horse here, how the left is destroying America. And by the way, folks, the big part of the horse there is called racism. You got Black Lives. Where am I going? Black Lives Matter. So great book. Pick yourself up a copy. Links in the description. Amazon. But the left is going to destroy this country from the inside out. I firmly believe it. And it's not just me that believes it, by the way. My number one man, Thomas Sowell, believes that as well. So when Lemon asked about slavery, Musk said that Americans should look to the future rather than the past. The tech mogul said, "We're all descendants from slaves," stating that everyone should be treated according to just who they are as an individual. Correct. It's not about the injustices of the past, even though we should recognize those injustices, but it's about moving forward and not trying to condemn or sit there and impose some penalty upon the present people of this time for the injustices that took place in the past. And that's what they want to do. Through one form, it would be reparations. They want you to sit there and pay for the injustices of those in the past, even though you're not racist, you never committed those injustices. It's insane. So you get penalized for somebody else's behavior, which is wild, but hell, that happens all the time. So somebody else's behavior, they come here illegally, and you have to pay for their housing, their food, their transportation. They're also getting their college paid for, which we just covered in the other day's episode. So you're paying for somebody else's injustices of the past and also their injustices of the present. So you're getting double effed at the end of the day. You're getting reamed double from behind. So furthermore, I also like to point out the fact of they're always bringing up the past. Why don't we move past the past and move towards the future? Because every time you keep bringing it up and making an issue, it just makes it more of an issue. And also the fact that you're trying to make something an issue that isn't an issue in the first place. I do not believe racism is a massive issue in the United States. Does it exist? Yes. But nowhere near it did in proportionality in the past. It's a myth. It's constantly being promulgated by the left as if it's something of fact and as if it's a bigger deal than what it is. We talk about things like this in the book, you guys. There's so many myths out there that the left promulgates, and it's constantly creating not a better society for a country, but a worse one. What future do you want? Is this something we want to make, fight about, constant dialogue forever, Musk asked? Or do we want to say, let's just move on and treat everyone, according to just who they are as an individual? God, it sounds a lot like Martin Luther King. It sounds a lot like we should judge people based on their character and not by the color of their skin. But we can't do that when you're on the Democrat part of the side of the aisle. Because, again, race is woven through all fabrics of society. And there's people here that experience racism, which is true. But everybody's given an opportunity in this country. It has nothing to do with their race. It has everything to do with their character. It has everything to do with you as an individual, but the left can't see it that way. Why? Because everything starts falling apart. Their narrative crumbles when you look at it that way, which is the way we should look at things. Judge somebody based on their character, who they are. I know I'm preaching to the choir. Damn it. Folks, I'm a white guy, granted, if I tanned because of the things that make me up as other things across the globe. I'm not going to reveal what I am. I'll let you decide. But look, if I could tan, okay? I used to be extremely dark guy. Folks, by the color of my skin, what does it have to do with my head? My hat's on crooked. What does this have to do with my head? Nothing. This is nothing. The left, for some reason, thinks that your race, how much melanin's in your skin, dictates something, and it doesn't. And they keep trying to morph it into something. It's absurd. It's absurd. It's frustrating as hell. I agree with you on that. That's ideal. But what's the evidence shows is that that's not what actually is in practice. I think we're doing better than anywhere else, which is true. The United States is the least racist country on this planet. Go to another country. Go to another country. Just experience the racism there. It's head spinning. That's true. I agree with that, Lemon said. But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean a whole lot to a whole lot of people who are able to take advantage of opportunities that you were able to take advantage of just because of the color of your skin. Now, this is where things went south real quick. So Musk said that some people use race and gender to be self-described victims, promoting a lecture from Lemon about how insulting it is and ignorant to the past. Well, I've also been discriminated against, and I know that I have, and I know that that's real, and that's for someone to say that it isn't happening and I should not. I should just move forward and not think about that and ignore the past is insulting. I'm not saying, Don, you are putting words in my mouth, Musk responded. I'm saying that I'm saying that we as a country should move beyond questions of race and gender, and that we should treat people like individuals and base our opinions on their character and their skills, which is, again, what we should be doing as individuals. The part of the interview that Don Lemon got screwed up on was the fact that, hey, you are offered certain incentives that basically black people and people of color aren't. So here's the segment I want to show you, because Lemon's wrong here, big time, and Elon Musk is right. Let's roll it.
I think we should not make this a constant subject. I think we need to move on. I think we should treat people like people.
You don't agree that this country was founded on racism and founded on slavery and in many ways inequities that still continue on to this day?
I think every country at that time, and I think even today, was extremely racist. Every country. And obviously slavery was present in about half of this country. Was not present in the North.
Very, very well, Elon. The mistake that you're making, though, my friend, is that it was the Democrats in the North and South that were pro-slavery. The same party that Don Lemon is a part of, the same dude is a part of the same party that was pro-slavery.
There was racism for sure, but I think we want to look to the future rather than the past. And instead of engaging in constant rehashing of the past, because in fact, if you look at history, if you study history broadly, everyone was a slave. Everyone.
Yes. Well, not everyone was a slave.
No,
but
everyone was a slave.
Okay, but
we are all descended from slaves.
Yeah.
Well, all of us.
Yeah.
It's just a question of when. Was it more recent or less recent? That's it.
Right.
But what future do we want? Is this something we want to make a part of our constant dialogue forever, or do we want to say, like, let's just move on and treat everyone, according to just who they are as an individual?
I agree with you with that. That's the ideal. But what the evidence shows is that that's not what's actually in practice.
I think we're doing better than anywhere else.
That's true. I agree with that. But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean a lot to a whole lot of people who are able to take advantage of the opportunities that you were able to take advantage of, simply because of the color of your skin.
Don's mistake right here.
What advantages did my color of my skin give me?
Well, there's an ease that you have in society that many people of color don't. You were able to come to this country voluntarily. There are many people who were not able to come to the country voluntarily. There are people who came here as slaves.
For me to come here.
And there is a legacy of slavery that still continues on. There's a legacy of racism that still continues on in this country. That's undeniable.
By the way, Don did not mention anything that as a person of a different color than Elon Musk couldn't do themselves. There's a lot of people that are migrants, by the way, that came here legally that aren't white. So you could do the same thing that he did right here. You can also become a billionaire. There are black billionaires. You could also be black and also any other color out there, Asian, Hispanic, I don't care what you are, you can become a millionaire. You can do anything a white person can do. It's a lie that this guy's promulgating, and it's a terrible thing to sit there and perpetuate into our society.
Well, if we keep talking about it nonstop, it will never go away.
Correct.
If we keep making that the central thing, it will never go away.
Why do you believe that?
I think I'm just making a simple statement of fact.
Correct.
So I think we want to get away from making everything a race or a gender or whatever issue, and just treat people like individuals.
By definition, if you keep talking about something, it will not go away. So why would you ask somebody, well, why do you think that? Like, how do you respond to that? I mean, that was the best response you could possibly give is, like, just by pure fact, if you don't ever shut up about it, it is not going to go away until you shut up about it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about it in the education system. I think we should talk about it so that we don't replicate that very same thing here today. But look at what's happening. We are talking about it left and right. The left is constantly bringing it up, and it's the left that wants to segregate graduations at universities. It's the left that wants to segregate dorm rooms at universities. It's the left that wants to segregate, again, classrooms based on race. All this is about race. It's insane. So even when we are talking about it, you still have the left promulgating the very same thing that they said was bad in the past, which was today, right now, in present time. I swear, I say this all the time. I feel I feel like somehow, like we're in an alternate universe because it just doesn't make sense to me. I try to. I try to understand what the hell's going on and how people can come to certain reasoning. I'm not better than anybody else. I will never say I am. I'm an idiot. I actually refer to myself as a knucklehead. I am an idiot. My vocabulary is not that strong. I'm not that great at anything. But for the love of God, I can understand all these basic concepts of like, what the hell is happening right now? Like you look around. It's insane. There we go. I got to say the word insane again. Well, folks, that is the show today. Oh my God, we did it. We got a long one. Pick yourself. I guess I want to drink a cup of coffee with you. Again, we're not making any money off this. It's just so you can have a nice mug. It doesn't go any cheaper on. Well, I almost just spilled. It doesn't go any cheaper on Spring. It's as cheap as we can make it. I think we make 2 cents. We make 2 cents on every mug. For just 2 cents a day, you can feed a bald man. Folks, you know I always appreciate hanging out with you. Thank you so much. Hit that like and subscribe button. Please leave us a comment down below. Anything you want. Good morning, good afternoon. Brad, we appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. Anything you want, just leave it down there. Joe Biden sucks. Trump 2024. You basically writing in the comment section and the live chat as well, but the comment section to be more specific. It helps the algorithm and YouTube see that you're interacting with the channel. And for each interaction, it helps boost us out there in the algorithm and sends our videos out there to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel. So your help and support would be greatly appreciated. And folks, it's only Tuesday, so I'll see you tomorrow, Wednesday, here on the Wild Brad Show.